The sun hadn't risen yet, but the air at Naval Station Great Lakes already hummed with tension. Boot camp mornings were like this, cold, dark, and filled with an unspoken challenge. Prove you belong. The recruits stood on the asphalt parade ground, boots planted, breath misting in the early dawn. Nervous chatter buzzed through the lines as they sized each other up. Then she arrived. A lone figure stepped off the transport bus. Small frame, steady walk, duffel bag hanging off her shoulder like she had been carrying its weight her whole life. Her name, stitched neatly on her uniform, read Ward A. Alyssa Ward. The moment she set foot on the training field, the whispering started soft at first, then growing like a wave. Who is she? She looks like she's 12. No way she survives the first week. She didn't react. She didn't look left or right. She kept walking, eyes forward, posture straight, movements controlled. It wasn't arrogance, it was discipline. Something learned, not natural. Most recruits tried to blend in on day one. Alyssa did the opposite without meaning to. She stood out precisely because she did nothing to stand out. And that made people curious. Too curious. A tall recruit with a linebacker build leaned toward his buddy. Bet she's here because her daddy's some officer. His friend snorted. Please, daddy's connections won't help her when we hit the obstacle course. Alyssa heard every word, the whispers, the laughter, the assumptions, but none of it mattered. She had heard worse, far worse than this. She set her duffel down neatly beside the others and stood quietly at attention. Her calm expression never shifted, but beneath her sleeve her fingers tightened, just slightly. Not again, she thought, not this time. Don't let them get in your head. While the recruits continued gossiping, she reached into her bag and pulled out a strip of athletic tape. She wrapped it carefully, deliberately, around her left wrist, tight enough to conceal what lay beneath, but loose enough not to restrict movement. A routine she had repeated thousands of times. Across the yard, a drill instructor caught sight of her. He frowned. Recruits weren't supposed to have personal gear yet. He marched over with heavy steps, boots striking the pavement. You, Ward. Alyssa's head snapped up. Yes, sir. That tape authorized. Yes, sir. His eyes narrowed suspiciously. She wasn't lying technically, but something about her tone made it feel like an answer carved out of precise wording, not the truth. He studied her a moment longer, but she didn't flinch. Fall in, he grunted. Form up with the rest. Yes, sir. She joined the formation again, but now every eye was on her. Even when she looked away, she felt them staring, whispering. Who is she? What is she hiding? Why is she so calm? Boot camp was built on noise, shouting, orders, panic. Yet the silence around Alyssa was louder than anything else on that field. During warm-ups, her movements were measured and perfect. Not showy, not flashy, just precise, too precise. Other recruits fumbled, gasped for air, or flapped around like they'd never run a mile in their lives. But Alyssa moved like someone who already knew exactly what came next, like someone who had trained for this moment long before boot camp ever existed. And that was the problem. Recruits weren't supposed to be good yet. A girl from Texas nudged her friend. She's freaky. Why isn't she tired? I don't know, the friend whispered back, but she's hiding something, I swear she is. By evening, the whispers had grown into rumors, rumors into theories, theories into a kind of weird, defensive hostility. Newcomers were supposed to be confused, overwhelmed, scared. Alyssa was none of those things, and that made people uneasy. But she didn't care about their opinions. She cared about keeping her head down, blending in, avoiding attention, because attention was dangerous for someone like her. She sat alone on her bunk after lights out, the barracks filled with the snoring and restless tossing of recruits trying to sleep off exhaustion. Alyssa sat cross-legged, the moonlight washing over her face through the window. She slowly unwound the tape from her wrist. The tattoo beneath glistened faintly in the pale light, a symbol so specific, so rare, so loaded with meaning that no one here would understand it. Not yet. She stared at it with a heavy breath. The past she had run from. The program she had escaped. The secret she had spent years burying. She covered it again quickly, heartbeat rising for the first time all day. They can't know, not here, not now, stay invisible. It was a promise she repeated to herself like a prayer. But the universe had other plans. At 400 hours, the lights blasted on. Recruits leapt to their feet as the drill instructors stormed in, barking orders, dragging everyone outside onto the parade ground. A hush fell instantly. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled onto the base, not a transport, not a supply vehicle. An official car. The doors opened, and out stepped a man whose name every recruit knew even before they were told who he was. Commander Nathan Cross. A Navy SEAL officer whose reputation alone could break a room into silence. His presence was rare here. He only visited when something important needed his attention, testing new training protocols, evaluating instructors, or scouting recruits. Commander Cross walked with the kind of controlled power that made people stand straighter as he passed. The instructors saluted him sharply. But Cross wasn't looking at them. He was scanning the recruits, carefully, intentionally. His eyes moved down the line one by one, analyzing posture, stance, breathing, the way only a man who spent his life in war zones could. And then his gaze froze. On her. Alyssa felt it before she even saw him, a ripple in the air, a shift in the energy around her. The hairs on her neck rose. Commander Cross took a step forward. Another, until he stood directly in front of her. Recruits broke formation to look, whispering aggressively now. Why's he looking at her? What did she do? Bro, is she in trouble already? The drill instructor barked, warned, front and center. She stepped out calmly, though her pulse hammered in her ears. Commander Cross studied her like she was a puzzle he was close to solving. Your stance, he said. His voice was deep, steady, unreadable. Not standard, not learned here. Alyssa didn't speak. He stared harder. Where were you trained? The recruits behind her froze. Trained. Before boot camp. Who was she? Alyssa opened her mouth to respond. But Cross's eyes dropped to her wrist. To the tape. To the thing she had hoped to keep hidden forever. He took a step closer. Recruit, he said quietly, what are you hiding under that tape? A hush rippled through the formation. Even the drill instructors looked confused. Alyssa swallowed hard. Nothing, sir. Cross didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Didn't accept the lie. Remove it, he ordered. Alyssa froze. The recruits leaned forward. The instructors tensed. The morning air thickened. She slowly reached for the end of the tape, peeling it up inch by inch. One strip. Then another. Then... Stop, a drill instructor shouted suddenly from across the field. Everyone whipped their heads around. Something had happened, something urgent enough to interrupt a SEAL commander. But as the instructors rushed away, Cross's gaze slid back to Alyssa's wrist and the half-exposed tattoo beneath the tape. His eyes widened with recognition, and with something that looked a lot like disbelief. Alyssa felt the world shift beneath her feet, because Commander Cross had seen enough to know exactly what she was trying to hide. And now it was only a matter of time before everyone else did too. The morning air was sharp, cutting through the barracks like a knife. Fog clung to the training field in thick, silvery sheets, making the asphalt gleam like wet steel. Every recruit's breath was visible in the cold dawn. The tension in the air was almost tangible, the kind of tension that tightened muscles, made hearts race, and set nerves on edge before the day even began. Recruits lined up in formation, boots clicking in synchronized rhythm, eyes forward, spines rigid. Some muttered to themselves under their breath. Some gritted their teeth. Some tried to look confident and failed miserably. And then the gates swung open and everything froze. Commander Nathan Cross stepped onto the field. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a presence that made even the most cocky recruits instinctively straighten, Cross exuded the kind of authority that couldn't be taught. His dark eyes swept the formation, calculating, measuring, observing every subtle shift in posture, every twitch of muscle. His reputation alone preceded him, Navy SEAL, decorated veteran, a man whose standards were so exacting that mediocrity felt like a personal insult. The recruits swallowed, suddenly aware that all their bravado would mean nothing in his presence. Even the drill instructors stiffened, their usual barking replaced by careful, deliberate movements. But Cross wasn't looking at them. He was scanning, slowly, deliberately, as if searching for one specific anomaly. And when his gaze landed on her, it stopped. Alyssa Ward. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't shift. Her hands rested calmly at her sides, her back straight, her chin lifted ever so slightly. The tape around her wrist was barely visible beneath her sleeve, but somehow he saw it. Something about that moment was electric. The fog seemed thicker, the morning darker, even though the sun had begun to rise. The recruits behind her shifted uneasily, whispers breaking out. "Who is that?" "She's hiding something." "Do you think she even belongs here?" Alyssa ignored them. She had learned long ago that attention could be dangerous, and she didn't want it. Not from anyone, not from him. Cross walked forward, each step deliberate, measured. Every recruit in formation felt the weight of his gaze. Alyssa felt it too, a silent assessment, an invisible scale weighing her, testing her. "Ward," the drill instructor barked, jolting her out of her thoughts. "Step forward." Alyssa did. Her boots hit the ground in a soft, controlled rhythm. She stopped a few paces ahead of the formation and saluted. Cross didn't return the salute immediately. He tilted his head, scrutinizing her like a man reading a complicated map. "Your stance," he said quietly, almost to himself, "not standard." Alyssa remained silent, trained to respond only when spoken to. "Not learned here." His gaze flicked to the tape around her wrist. Subtle but unmistakable, he knew before she even thought about hiding it. Alyssa's heart skipped. She had never encountered anyone who could see that quickly and recognize its significance. "Where were you trained?" Cross asked, his voice calm but impossible to ignore. The whispers behind her grew louder. "Trained before boot camp." The thought alone sent a ripple through the formation. Sir, nowhere specific," Alyssa replied carefully. She had learned how to phrase answers like this in the rarest, most calculated way, enough truth to be technically accurate, but not enough to give away secrets. Cross's eyes narrowed. "Do not lie to me, recruit." Alyssa felt the fog thicken around her. The silence was deafening. Her pulse quickened, but outwardly she remained composed. Cross took a step closer. His gaze dropped again to the edge of tape on her wrist. "What are you hiding under that tape?" he asked. The words echoed across the parade ground. Every recruit shifted uncomfortably, the tension snapping tighter. "Nothing, sir," Alyssa replied, steady but firm. Cross didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't look away. "Remove it," he commanded. Time seemed to stretch. The recruits leaned forward, holding their collective breath. The drill instructors tensed, ready to intervene if needed. Alyssa's fingers touched the edge of the tape, and she hesitated. This was the moment she had been dreading, the moment when years of buried secrets might be exposed. She slowly peeled the tape, inch by inch, careful not to let the fog of nerves make her shaky. Her pulse thumped in her ears, louder than any command. The recruits craned their necks, trying to catch a glimpse. 1 strip. 2 strips. Then she paused. The fog seemed thicker now. The world narrowed to the small movement of her hand, the faint reveal of the tattoo beneath. Commander Cross took a step closer, his face unreadable but his eyes sharp as a hawk. And then, just as the last strip of tape loosened, the alarm blared. A shrill, urgent wail that tore across the base. The drill instructor shouted, "Code Red, Simulation ACTIVATED." The recruits jumped. Panic surged. Smoke machines hissed along the edge of the field, simulating chaos, fire, and confusion. Alyssa barely flinched. Her pulse steadied, her body moving instinctively as if she'd been waiting for this exact moment her entire life. Cross's eyes flicked away from her wrist momentarily, but the pause was enough. Alyssa's hand froze. Her secret hadn't been fully exposed yet. Not everyone had seen it, but Cross he had. She pulled her sleeve back down, hiding the tattoo, and joined the line for the simulation drill. The recruits scrambled, dragging weighted dummies, crawling through mud, navigating smoke. Alyssa moved with quiet precision. Every motion was calculated, efficient, perfect. Other recruits struggled, panicked, stumbled, but she flowed, smooth, fast, controlled. Commander Cross observed her from the side, eyes narrowed. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Every movement Alyssa made told him something. Something deeper than training. Something dangerous. A recruit whispered behind her, "She's insane. Did you see that?" Another said, "Yeah, like she's done this before. Like she's trained for everything." Cross's voice cut through the fog, calm but icy. "Ward with me." The world seemed to hold its breath. Every recruit froze mid-motion. Alyssa's heart leapt. She stepped toward him, boots splashing in the wet grass, fog swirling around her like smoke in a war zone. He led her away from the others, toward a quieter section of the field. The distant wails of the Code Red simulation became a muffled backdrop. "You're not a beginner," Cross said. His tone was steady, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. "Your breathing, your stance, your movements, you're advanced. Too advanced for this stage of boot camp." Alyssa stayed silent. Words would betray her. They always did. Cross's gaze dropped again to the edge of the tape on her wrist. "Show me what's under that tape," he said, low and firm. Alyssa's throat tightened. This wasn't the time. Not in front of him, not in front of the other recruits. Not here where attention was dangerous. "I can't, sir," she whispered. Cross didn't move, didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten. His eyes bore into hers with the kind of intensity that made even seasoned recruits sweat. "A tattoo doesn't get covered unless it means something," he said. Her chest tightened. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to vanish. But she stayed. "Do you know what I am, recruit?" he asked quietly. Alyssa's mind raced. She didn't answer, she didn't dare. And then, just as a drill instructor's shout cut across the yard, demanding his attention for the simulation, Cross stepped away, his eyes still locked on hers. "This conversation isn't over," he said. Alyssa exhaled softly, a mix of relief and dread. But she didn't notice the movement in the shadows, a figure lurking near the edge of the field. A recruit who had been watching her since the first morning, digging into her past, taking notes, asking questions. Dalton Briggs. His eyes narrowed. He had seen her hesitation, her movements, her secret tape. And now he knew something crucial. There was more to Alyssa Ward than anyone here could imagine. And before she even realized it, the quiet tension around her had shifted into a storm, one that threatened to pull her secret into the open. And it all started with a tattoo that no one was supposed to see. The fog lingered over the training field like a living thing, curling around the recruits' boots and muffling the distant sound of the rising sun. The Code Red simulation had ended hours ago, but the tension lingered, thick and silent. Every recruit felt it. Something was coming. Something more than the usual drill, more than the routine obstacles that tested endurance and courage. Alyssa Ward stood near the back of the formation, calm as always, shoulders squared, eyes forward. The other recruits couldn't stop stealing glances at her. After the chaos of the code red simulation, her calm demeanor seemed almost unreal. The drill instructor clapped his hands, sharp as a rifle shot. Next test, the wall, confidence breaker, line up. The recruits shuffled toward the towering structure, a 10-foot wooden wall with ropes dangling from its peak. Many froze for a moment at the base, staring upward. This wall had a reputation. It humiliated the weak, crushed the unsure, and exposed anyone who thought they were stronger than they were. Alyssa didn't hesitate. She stood at the back, watching. Every fiber of her being was focused, silent. She didn't need to size it up. She already knew what to do. The first recruit approached, a bulky young man with a head of blonde hair sticking out from under his cap. He grabbed the rope and began to climb. Halfway up, he slipped, arms flailing, and fell to the mat below with a loud thud. A ripple of laughter went through the group, but it was tinged with nervousness. No one wanted to be next. The second recruit attempted a running jump but barely made it halfway. Arms shaking, legs quivering, he slid back down, cursing under his breath. Finally, the drill instructor barked, "Ward, you're UP." Alyssa's heart skipped, not with fear but anticipation. Her eyes met the instructor. "Yes, sir." The whispers began again. "She's tiny, she's going to fail. She'll need 3 people to lift her. She doesn't even look strong enough to pull herself up." Alyssa ignored them. She didn't care what anyone thought. Her mind went blank, focusing only on the wall. She took a deep breath and ran toward the base. Her feet pounded the wet asphalt, her body a machine of fluid, precise motion. She jumped, grabbed the rope with her fingertips, and hoisted herself upward. Her movements were smooth, almost effortless. Her legs pressed against the wood, pushing her higher, every motion perfectly timed. She didn't grunt. She didn't falter. She didn't look down. Within seconds, she was at the top. Hands gripping the edge, she swung a leg over, then the other. Standing on the platform above, she exhaled once, barely audible, and dropped lightly to the other side. The field went silent. The recruits' mouths hung open. Even the drill instructors paused, stunned. Cross, standing on the edge of the formation, raised an eyebrow. For the first time, his expression betrayed surprise. Alyssa hadn't even tried to show off. She hadn't exerted herself more than necessary, yet her skill was undeniable. A whisper ran through the formation. Who trained her? She's not supposed to be able to do that." Alyssa didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. Her eyes, calm and measured, scanned the line of recruits and then landed on Cross. His gaze had not left her since the moment she completed the climb. He was still studying her wrist, or rather, the faint trace of tape that hid the tattoo beneath, the one mark that revealed her past. The drill instructor, finally recovering from the shock, barked orders for the next group to climb. The recruits hesitated, unsteady, fumbling, some collapsing halfway up. But the whispers about Alyssa didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder. "She's hiding something. That's not normal. Yeah, she's like trained or something, like a professional." Alyssa's pulse remained steady. She knew the whispers weren't just gossip, they were recognition. People always sensed when someone had been through more than they had. She had learned early to ignore it, but now, standing quietly as the next recruit struggled, she felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. Cross stepped forward, boots crunching in the gravel. He approached Alyssa silently, his dark eyes locked on hers. The recruits noticed his approach and instinctively backed away. They knew better than to interrupt a SEAL officer. "Ward," he said quietly, "step forward." She obeyed, walking toward him with careful precision. Each step was deliberate, controlled, like a soldier trained to move without drawing attention, yet commanding focus by the way she moved. Cross studied her silently for several long moments. Then he asked, "Where did you learn that technique?" Alyssa hesitated. This was the moment that could unravel years of secrecy. To answer honestly would expose her past. the one she had fought so hard to leave behind. To lie would risk everything here, but she had learned long ago how to navigate questions like this without giving herself away. "I trained at a civilian program, sir," she said carefully. "Basic strength and agility training." Cross's lips pressed into a thin line. His eyes flicked again to the faint edge of tape on her wrist. He didn't say anything further, but the silence was heavier than any command. Behind her, recruits whispered. Dalton Briggs, the young man who had been observing her since the first day, narrowed his eyes. He didn't buy it. He had been watching, analyzing, nodding everything. Something about Alyssa Ward didn't fit. And now, with Cross's quiet scrutiny, he knew he needed answers. Alyssa's attention remained on Cross. She could feel the intensity of his gaze probing deeper than anyone else had. It wasn't curiosity. It was recognition. Something about her told him she was not a standard recruit, not by a long shot. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Recruits struggled, fell, and collapsed. Alyssa moved through drills with fluid precision. Every time she completed an obstacle, she felt the weight of countless eyes on her, questioning, judging, fearing. Finally, the drill instructor called a halt. "Break." The recruits stumbled back, gasping, exhausted. Some cursed. Some laughed nervously. Alyssa remained calm, steady. Her chest rose and fell in controlled rhythm. Cross walked toward her again, closer this time. The air seemed to still. Even the fog seemed to pause, wrapping around them like a shroud. "You're not a beginner," he said quietly. "You've trained before, I can see it. And this," his eyes flicked to her wrist, "this isn't a mark any civilian program would teach you." Alyssa's throat tightened. The secret she had carried for years, the tattoo, the symbol of a past she had survived and a life she had escaped, pressed against her skin like fire. She looked at him, waiting for the next command, her hands trembling just slightly beneath the sleeve. "You're hiding something," Cross said. His tone was calm, but the weight behind it made the air vibrate. "Show me." Alyssa's pulse quickened. She swallowed, eyes flicking to the recruits now watching nervously from a distance. She wanted to run, she wanted to hide, but she didn't. Before she could respond, a loud commotion erupted at the edge of the field. The alarm system blared again, not a drill this time, but an unexpected warning. Recruits froze. Cross's eyes didn't leave her wrist. Alyssa exhaled, quiet and controlled. She hadn't revealed her secret fully yet. Not to him, not to anyone. But the moment of exposure was approaching faster than she had planned. And then she felt it, someone in the shadows moving toward the edge of the formation. Dalton Briggs, his gaze fixed on her, focused, calculating. He had seen her hesitation. He had seen the tape, and now he knew something important. The quiet tension around her shifted. The whispers, the judgment, the curiosity, they all intensified. The fog of the morning thickened. Cross took a step back, his eyes narrowing. "This isn't over, Ward," he said softly. Alyssa nodded, barely breathing. Behind her, Dalton made a decision, one that would set everything in motion. He was going to find out what she was hiding. And in the fog, with the morning sun beginning to pierce the clouds, Alyssa knew one thing for certain. Her secret was no longer hers alone. And the world she had tried to escape was about to catch up to her. The alarm screamed across the base, cutting through the fog like a jagged blade. Sirens blared, whistles shrieked, and the recruits froze, uncertain which way to run. Code Red, the drill instructor's favorite tool for chaos, had never felt like this. Not today. Today, the danger didn't feel simulated. Alyssa Ward exhaled slowly, the mist of her breath blending with the fog. She didn't panic. Her heartbeat was steady, her mind sharp. Every sense heightened. Every detail counted. The sound of boots pounding the asphalt, the smell of smoke machines, the faint metallic tang of adrenaline in the air. "Everyone move. Now," the drill instructor barked, voice slicing through the chaos. Recruits scrambled, some tripping over each other, some panicking entirely. Weighted dummies were dragged in frantic attempts to complete the simulation. Shouts of failure, fear, and exhaustion mingled with the wail of sirens. Alyssa didn't hesitate. She moved with purpose, weaving through the chaos, calculating every step, every turn. Her training, more than any boot camp had given, guided her body. She didn't stumble. She didn't hesitate. She flowed. Commander Cross watched from the edge of the smoke-filled field, eyes fixed on her. Nothing in the standard protocol could explain her composure. She moved like a professional, like a ghost he had only read about in classified mission reports. Two recruits were struggling to drag a dummy across a mud pit. Their faces were red, muscles quivering. Alyssa's instincts kicked in. Without hesitation, she stepped forward. "I've got this," she said, voice low, calm. The recruits laughed nervously, assuming she couldn't possibly lift it alone. She didn't argue, didn't hesitate. With a fluid motion, she hoisted the dummy onto her shoulder, every muscle working in perfect harmony. She moved across the pit with effortless speed, dropping the dummy neatly on the other side. Silence, even the drill instructors paused, stunned. Cross took a step forward. His expression darkened, his jaw tightening. This wasn't normal. Nothing about her was normal. He motioned for her. "Ward with me now." The recruits froze. Everyone knew better than to interrupt a SEAL officer. Alyssa stepped forward, boots splashing in puddles as the fog wrapped around her like smoke in a battlefield. Cross led her to the far side of the field, away from the recruits and the chaos. Smoke swirled around them, partially obscuring their figures from the others. For the first time that day, the world seemed to shrink down to just the two of them. "You're not a standard recruit," Cross said quietly. "I can see it in your movements, your breathing, your posture. You've trained before, beyond basic fitness, beyond agility drills, way beyond." Alyssa's hands twitched slightly beneath her sleeve. Her pulse was steady outwardly, but inwardly every nerve screamed. "I trained, sir. It was specialized," she said carefully. Words were dangerous, and she chose them like a sniper choosing a target. Cross didn't flinch, he didn't nod. He just studied her, eyes dark, unreadable. His gaze fell again to her wrist, the edge of the tape visible beneath her sleeve. He didn't ask immediately. He didn't need to. Everyone with eyes could see it, the subtle hiding of something important. But Cross had the instincts of a man trained to recognize threats and secrets in a single glance. "You're hiding a tattoo," he said, calm but precise. "Show me." Alyssa swallowed, throat tight. She had prepared for every drill, every test, every physical challenge in boot camp, but she had not prepared for this. Not a SEAL officer discovering the single most dangerous secret she carried. I can't, sir," she whispered, almost inaudible over the sirens and chaos. Cross's gaze didn't waver. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply said, low and deliberate, "A tattoo doesn't get covered unless it means something, and what it means can get you killed." Her chest tightened. She had survived decades by keeping her past hidden, by pretending to be another version of herself. But here, now, she couldn't hide from him. Not entirely. Behind the fog, a recruit stumbled, crying out as they tripped over a rope. The chaos continued, but Alyssa's focus was inward, on the edge of the tape on her wrist, on Cross, on the impossible choice she faced. If she revealed the tattoo, she would be exposed. Not just to Cross, but potentially to the entire world of recruits, instructors, and administrators. A world she had worked years to avoid. Cross stepped closer, voice soft but commanding. "I've seen enough to know you're not who you say you are. This isn't a simple civilian program. You're trained far beyond boot camp levels, and your tattoo," he paused, eyes narrowing, "tells me everything I need to know." Alyssa felt her stomach drop. Recognition. He knew. Somehow he knew, and he wasn't even looking at the full tattoo yet. Just the tip, the edge under the tape, was enough for a man like Cross. Her pulse raced. She wanted to speak, to deflect, to lie, but the words caught in her throat. She had no choice now. Her silence was her armor, but it was cracking. From the edge of the field, a whistle pierced the fog. Drill instructors were signaling the end of the simulation. The recruits slowly collected their dummies, exhausted, mud-splattered, some shaking, some laughing nervously. But no one moved toward Alyssa. They were too busy staring, whispering, analyzing. She could feel their eyes on her back, on her calm demeanor, on the faint line of tape still hiding her secret. Dalton Briggs, the observant recruit who had been watching her since day one, finally took action. He moved forward silently, slipping through the ranks of exhausted recruits, eyes fixed on Alyssa. He had been waiting, calculating, trying to understand her since the first morning. He knew something no one else did. Alyssa sensed him before she saw him. She could feel the intent, the curiosity, the determination in his gaze even from across the field. He was dangerous because he didn't understand yet. And when people like him didn't understand, they pushed. They dug. Cross spoke again, almost a whisper. "This conversation isn't over, Ward." Alyssa nodded slowly. Her hand shook slightly beneath the sleeve covering her wrist, but she kept her composure. She had survived worse. She could survive this. But deep down, a warning ignited in her chest. Dalton was coming closer. Cross already knew more than anyone should. And somewhere in the fog, the recruits whispered, wondering, questioning, guessing at the truth they could barely see. Alyssa exhaled slowly, forcing herself to calm her racing thoughts. She had survived years of secret programs, covert operations, and hidden agendas. She could survive this. But she had no idea that the next move would change everything. Across the field, a shadow shifted near the edge of the fog. Someone was watching, someone who had been patient, waiting, gathering information. Someone who might not wait for permission or safety. Alyssa's eyes flicked to the shadow. Recognition sparked. Not immediate danger yet, but close, too close. And then, over the distant hum of sirens and shouts, Alyssa heard a sound that made her blood run cold. A low, deliberate click, almost mechanical, behind her. She turned slightly, heart hammering. But before she could react fully, the drill instructor barked, "All recruits assemble. Move." The command snapped everyone into motion, chaos renewed, confusion rippling like wildfire. The shadow in the fog remained unmoving. Alyssa's chest tightened. The secret she had carried for years, the tattoo under the tape, it wasn't hidden anymore. Cross had seen enough to know. Dalton was closing in, and now, in the fog and chaos of the base, someone else had noticed her. Someone with intent. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the mist. The first step toward survival had just begun. And in that split second, Alyssa realized everything was about to change. Because the past she had buried wasn't just catching up with her, it was already here. The fog was thicker now, curling around the training field like a living, breathing thing. Boots splashed through puddles. Shouts echoed. The recruits were exhausted, faces smeared with mud, lungs burning. Yet amidst the chaos, one figure moved with unnatural calm. Alyssa Ward. Every step she took was precise, controlled, calculated. She was a ghost in the storm of sweat and panic. The recruits around her stumbled and slipped, struggling to keep up. Cross had stepped back, watching, silent and calculating. He had seen enough to know she was no ordinary recruit, but there was still more to uncover. And then there was Dalton Briggs. Dalton had spent days observing her, noting her posture, her breathing, the way she moved, not just during drills, but during every quiet moment, every pause, every interaction. Something about her didn't fit. She wasn't just disciplined. She was trained, professionally trained, and he had seen the subtle twitch at her wrist under the tape. He knew it wasn't ordinary. Now, as the recruits scrambled to their next obstacle, Dalton seized his chance. He slipped through the chaos, boots barely making a sound on the wet asphalt. He kept his eyes locked on her. She was calm, almost ethereal, moving as if nothing could touch her. His curiosity burned. Who is she really? "Ward," he muttered under his breath. He ducked behind a stack of wooden crates, heart racing. "What are you hiding?" Alyssa's attention was elsewhere, on the obstacle in front of her, on her own movements. She hadn't noticed him yet, but Dalton's instincts were honed by years of being a meticulous observer. He had waited for the right moment, and now that moment had come. Dalton crouched low, moving closer. He could see the faint edge of tape at her wrist. Carefully, he reached out, just enough to flick it slightly, testing if she would react. Her head snapped toward him. For a fraction of a second, their eyes locked. The fog seemed to thicken between them. Dalton's curiosity burned, but so did a strange sense of danger. Alyssa didn't flinch, didn't retreat. She simply stared back, calm, unreadable. Dalton swallowed. He had seen something now, a glimpse beneath the tape, and in that glimpse he recognized it immediately. It wasn't just a tattoo. It was a symbol, a mark so rare, so specific that it could only belong to a handful of people in the entire country. A mark tied to covert operations, elite programs, and secrets that most civilians couldn't even comprehend. Dalton's mind raced. He had read about such symbols in declassified reports, in articles, in whispered rumors online. Few recruits, fewer civilians, and almost no officers ever had this training. And yet here she was, in plain sight, hiding it beneath a strip of tape. He stepped closer, voice low. You're one of them, aren't you?" Alyssa's gaze didn't waver. "One of who?" she asked calmly, though every muscle in her body was coiled like a spring. Dalton's eyes narrowed. "You know exactly who I mean. You've trained for operations. The stuff we're told doesn't exist anymore. You're not here by accident." Alyssa exhaled just slightly, enough for Dalton to see the subtle tension in her jaw. Her past, the life she had fought to bury, was brushing dangerously close to the surface. Before she could respond, the drill instructor barked, "Next obstacle, move it." The recruits scrambled forward again. Dalton followed, keeping his distance but eyes locked on her every move. Every subtle motion, every controlled breath, every effortless jump across obstacles was a confirmation of what he had suspected. Finally, during a brief pause, Dalton stepped up beside her. The fog swirled around them like a cloak. No one else was paying attention, too caught up in their own struggles. "You can't hide it forever," Dalton whispered, almost urgently. "I've seen enough. You're not what you appear to be." Alyssa's heart skipped a beat. Her past had survived this long by staying in shadows, by keeping her identity carefully compartmentalized. And yet here, in the middle of boot camp, she was being unraveled. "You shouldn't be asking questions you're not ready for the answer to," she said quietly. Her voice was calm, but the steel behind it was unmistakable. Dalton smirked, ignoring the warning. "I'm ready. I can see what you are. I can see your tattoo, I know its meaning. And I know your hiding skills that go far beyond these walls." Alyssa froze. No one, not in years, had ever spoken like that to her. Not in training, not in briefings, not even in the field. Dalton had recognized her. And worse, he was dangerously close to piecing everything together. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice low. "You're not a normal recruit, not at all. You've done things most of us can't even imagine, and yet here you are pretending." Alyssa felt the weight of his gaze, the unrelenting intensity. She had trained her entire life to stay invisible. She had trained to survive. But Dalton wasn't afraid. Dalton was curious, and curiosity could be deadly in her world. Before she could respond, the distant shout of Cross cut through the fog. "Ward, report 2ME now." The command sent a jolt through her body. Cross's eyes had never left her during the entire morning, and now the urgency in his voice made it clear. He knew something was up. He had seen enough to demand an explanation, and he would not be ignored. Dalton watched her hesitate. His grin faded slightly. He could see the calculation in her eyes, the choice she was weighing. Show Cross her secret or keep it buried, risking exposure anyway. Alyssa took a deep breath. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to vanish, to run before anyone else could uncover her past. But she didn't. She squared her shoulders and began moving toward Cross, boots splashing through puddles, fog swirling like smoke around her. Dalton followed silently. He wasn't sure what he would do next, but he needed answers. He needed to know who she really was. Cross stood at the far side of the field, his presence cutting through the fog like a knife. His gaze was sharp, calculating, and filled with an intensity that Alyssa had never faced before. "Ward," he barked again, "now." Alyssa stopped a few feet away. She looked down briefly at her wrist, then slowly lifted her sleeve just enough to reveal the edge of the tattoo. Cross's eyes widened just slightly. Recognition flashed. He knew. He already knew. Dalton gasped quietly, realizing the implications. He had pieced together part of her secret, but Cross had seen enough to understand the magnitude of what she was hiding. Alyssa's heart hammered. Her secret, her past, her life, all of it was teetering on the edge of exposure. Cross's voice was low, deliberate, and commanding. "Explain yourself." Alyssa's mind raced. One word could ruin everything. One misstep could expose her to a world she had fought to escape. She looked at Dalton briefly, then back at Cross. The fog hung heavy, obscuring the world around them. Silence stretched. And then a sound, faint but unmistakable, echoed through the mist. A click, deliberate, mechanical. Someone was approaching. Alyssa's pulse spiked. She turned slightly, eyes scanning the fog. Another shadow moved, a presence she hadn't noticed before. Her instincts screamed danger. Her past had found her here. Cross didn't move. He didn't need to. His gaze was fixed on her wrist, on the tattoo on her. Dalton's eyes narrowed. He took a step closer, curiosity and determination burning in his gaze. And Alyssa knew, with chilling certainty, that the storm had only just begun. The fog swallowed them all, but the truth, her truth, was about to be exposed. And nothing would ever be the same. The fog had thickened to the point where visibility was barely 10 feet. The distant wails of the code red sirens were muted under its weight, replaced by the sloshing of boots in puddles and the occasional shout of exhausted recruits. Every shadow seemed alive. Every movement could hide danger. Alyssa Ward moved carefully, boots sinking slightly in the wet asphalt. She could feel Dalton's eyes on her, piercing, relentless, filled with questions she had no intention of answering. Behind her, Cross's presence loomed like a silent predator, assessing, calculating. The combination was suffocating. Dalton took a step forward, breaking the fragile silence. "You're hiding everything," he said low, almost urgent. "I can see it in your stance, your breathing. The way you move, it's not normal." Alyssa didn't flinch. Her jaw tightened. She could smell the faint metallic tang of his adrenaline, the nervousness he didn't realize he was giving away. Most people would have frozen by now. Most people would have panicked. But she didn't. Calm was her armor, discipline her shield. Cross's voice cut through the mist like a rifle shot. "Ward, stop." She froze. Dalton paused mid-step, his eyes wide. The SEAL officer was close now, boots silent, shadowed by the fog and somehow more imposing than she remembered. He didn't shout. He didn't bark. But the weight of his gaze, the authority behind his calm, commanded absolute attention. "Show me the tattoo," Cross said quietly, but every word carried the weight of command. Alyssa's pulse quickened. She had survived a lifetime of hiding, of running, of lying to protect herself. And yet here she was, cornered, with her secret dangling on the edge of exposure. She slowly lifted her sleeve, the fog curling around her wrist like smoke. Dalton's eyes widened at the sight. The tattoo was no ordinary symbol. It was intricate, almost surgical in its precision, etched in dark ink. A mark that spoke of classified programs, elite operations, covert missions no civilian would ever understand. Dalton gasped quietly, the realization dawning on him. She wasn't just trained. She was one of them, one of the few who had survived the programs no one talked about. Cross's dark eyes locked onto the tattoo. Recognition flashed, brief but undeniable. He didn't speak immediately. He simply studied it, analyzing every line, every mark, every hidden meaning. Then he stepped closer, boots crunching in the puddles until he was mere feet away. "This is not standard," he murmured. His voice was calm, but there was a tension underlying it, a hint of disbelief. "You're not a recruit, you're an operative, a survivor of specialized programs, and you've been hiding it." Alyssa's hands tightened subtly, the calm she had maintained for years threatened by the intensity of his scrutiny. She didn't respond immediately. Words could betray her. Lies could unravel her life in an instant. Dalton moved closer, unable to contain himself. "I knew it. I knew there was more to you than boot camp. You're one of those operatives they never talk about, the ones who survive the impossible." Alyssa's eyes flicked toward him, a sharp warning in their depths. Dalton was dangerous, not because of his physical strength, but because of his curiosity. He didn't understand the stakes. He didn't understand what exposure could mean. Cross's voice cut through again, firmer this time. "Ward, you need to explain yourself. Now." Her throat tightened. She had trained her entire life to avoid situations like this, to stay invisible, to survive. But Cross had seen enough, Dalton had seen enough, and the fog of secrecy was dissipating fast. I can't tell you everything, sir," she said, voice low, steady despite the storm inside. "Not here, not now." Cross's eyes narrowed, studying her. "You don't get to choose where or when. Secrets like this don't stay buried. Not from me. Not from anyone with experience in this field." Dalton stepped closer again, ignoring her warning glare. "Then tell me, you can't hide it from me either. I can see what you are." Alyssa's pulse raced. She knew she had seconds to decide. Seconds before exposure would spiral into chaos. She couldn't let Dalton or anyone else know the full truth yet. Not the missions, not the training, not the networks she had infiltrated, not the people who would come after her if her identity was revealed. Suddenly, a sharp movement caught her eye, the shadow Dalton had noticed earlier. Someone else was approaching from the mist. Someone deliberate, moving with intent. Her instincts screamed danger. Cross noticed it too. His body shifted subtly, positioning himself between Alyssa and the approaching figure. His eyes narrowed. "Stay calm," he muttered, more to her than to Dalton. The newcomer emerged from the fog. A tall figure, hooded, movement precise, every step silent. A recruit. No, too deliberate, too controlled. Alyssa's stomach tightened. She recognized the movement, the kind that comes only from someone trained to kill or survive. Dalton noticed it too and froze, realization dawning. Who is that?" he whispered, voice trembling slightly. Cross didn't answer immediately. He assessed, calculated, then said, "We have company, someone who knows more than they should. Be ready." Alyssa's mind raced. Her past had found her. Not through the recruits, not through Cross, but through someone else, someone who had tracked her down. And in the fog, with Dalton's curiosity pressing close, she knew there was no turning back. The figure stopped a few feet away, lifting the hood slightly. The face was partially obscured by shadow, but the eyes gleamed with intent. Alyssa felt the familiar chill of recognition. Someone who had crossed paths with her before, someone who had survived encounters she had thought were buried in the past. Dalton stepped forward, unaware of the danger. "Wait, who are you?" The figure's voice was low, clipped, almost metallic. "Alyssa Ward." Her body tensed. Every instinct screamed at her to react. But Cross stepped forward first, eyes locked on the newcomer, calm but ready. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly, deadly in its precision. The figure's eyes flicked to him, then back to Alyssa. "It's too late for that. She belongs to me." Alyssa's pulse spiked. The words triggered a cascade of memories, missions, covert operations, betrayals, and hidden enemies she had thought were long gone. Cross's voice was firm. "Not on my watch." Dalton's mouth fell open. She's in danger. But he paused, realizing too late that he had underestimated the stakes entirely. The newcomer moved suddenly, breaking the tension with a fluid motion that signaled intent. Every muscle in Alyssa's body coiled. Years of training, hidden beneath the facade of a bootcamp recruit, surged forward. She could feel Dalton's gaze, wide and questioning, on her. She didn't have time to explain. Not now. Cross's presence was a shield, but even he knew the danger was real. His hands went to his side, ready for anything. Alyssa made a choice. Her hidden past, the missions she had survived, the secrets she had carried, they would no longer stay buried. She stepped forward, eyes locked on the approaching figure. The fog swirled around them like smoke in a war zone. Silence fell for a fraction of a second. Then the tension snapped. The first move came, sudden, precise, and violent. Alyssa's survival instincts kicked in, honed over years of impossible operations. She dodged, countered, every motion fluid and lethal. Cross was beside her, observing, calculating, guiding subtly but not interfering. Dalton stumbled back, shock etched on his face. The newcomer was skilled, fast, trained. But Alyssa was faster. Years of hidden missions, of surviving impossible odds, of outmaneuvering enemies in shadows, it all came into play. She felt the past collide with the present. And in that moment she realized, nothing at boot camp would ever be the same. The fog shifted. The figure paused, assessing, calculating. And then, before anyone could act again, a sharp whistle echoed from across the field. Drill instructors were back, alarms blaring, chaos renewed. Dalton's eyes widened. What now? Alyssa's jaw tightened. Now, she said quietly, we survive. And in the fog, the first strike had been made. The storm of secrets, training, and danger was only beginning. Boot camp had become a battlefield, and she was no longer just a recruit. The fog hung thick over the field, curling around every boot step, every shout, every movement. The sirens from the code-red drill mixed with the distant thunder of approaching storm clouds, creating a surreal, chaotic symphony. Mud splashed beneath boots, and the air was heavy with the scent of wet asphalt, sweat, and tension. Alyssa Ward moved with a precision that made her look almost unreal. Each step was calculated, each turn premeditated. She was no longer a recruit, no longer blending into the chaos. Every motion spoke of years of training, of surviving impossible odds, of moving through danger and emerging unscathed. Dalton Briggs stumbled back, eyes wide. He had been observing her for weeks, and he had finally pieced together the truth. She wasn't just skilled. She wasn't just disciplined. She was something else entirely, someone forged in fire, someone trained for missions most people couldn't even imagine. You're a ghost," Dalton whispered, almost to himself, as he watched her pivot and counter the movements of the hooded figure advancing from the mist. "I can't believe. I thought this was just boot camp." Alyssa's eyes flicked toward him, a sharp warning in their depths. He didn't understand the stakes. He didn't know what exposing her could mean, not just for her, but for everyone connected to her past. Curiosity could be deadly. Dalton's had just crossed that line. Cross moved beside her, silent and imposing. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone was enough to anchor her focus, to steady the storm raging within her chest. Every SEAL officer knew instinctively how to command the battlefield without words, and Alyssa was living that lesson in real time. The hooded figure lunged forward, but Alyssa was faster. Her movements were a fluid blend of combat training, reflex, and instinct honed over years she could barely admit to herself. She sidestepped, grabbed the figure's arm, and twisted with precision. The motion was smooth, effortless, yet lethal in its intent. Dalton gasped. She's unstoppable," he muttered. Alyssa didn't answer. Her focus was total. Every fiber of her being was tuned to survival, to control, to maintaining the delicate balance between exposure and concealment. The hooded figure paused, recalculated, and attacked again. This time faster, more aggressive. Alyssa parried, countered, and pivoted, moving with the grace of someone who had spent years dancing with danger. Mud and fog swirled around her boots, and the storm above seemed to echo the tension on the ground. Cross watched, arms crossed, calculating. He could see every move, every subtle shift in balance, every microsecond reaction. This wasn't training. This was combat, real, lethal, and unforgiving. Dalton's face was pale. She's in another league, he whispered, disbelief etched in every word. Alyssa's pulse was steady. Her mind raced, cataloging every threat, every angle, every potential exposure. The tattoo on her wrist burned faintly beneath the tape she had partially revealed, a symbol of her hidden past, her covert missions, her identity forged in shadows. It was the key to everything she was, everything she had survived, everything she had to protect. The hooded figure faltered slightly, recognizing the precision of her movements. Every strike Alyssa made was calculated, almost surgical. She didn't just react, she anticipated, predicted, and countered. It was a dance of survival, deadly, beautiful, terrifying. Dalton's curiosity edged closer to panic. What are you? He demanded, voice trembling. You can't just be human, you're trained for everything. Alyssa shot him a glance, sharp, icy, warning him silently. He didn't know how dangerous it was to pry, how quickly curiosity could turn into catastrophe. She had learned to survive operatives, hunters, assassins, and the unseen forces of her past. Dalton was merely an amateur intruder into a world he didn't understand. Cross finally spoke, voice calm but carrying undeniable authority. Ward, stand down for a moment. Assess. This is no ordinary threat. Alyssa's eyes flicked to him, then to the figure. She read the stance, the weight distribution, the subtle twitch in the hands. Whoever this was, they weren't just trained, they were dangerous, deliberate, and persistent, and they had found her. The hooded figure made another move, faster, more calculated, aiming for Alyssa's flank. But she anticipated it. With a sudden pivot, she redirected the attack, using the opponent's momentum against them. The figure crashed into the mud with a heavy thud, sliding several feet before coming to a stop. Dalton's jaw dropped. Did you see that? He breathed. She's incredible. Alyssa didn't respond. Her focus was already on the next threat, the subtle shift in the mist, the faint rustle that signaled another potential attack. She was aware of Dalton, aware of Cross, but her priority was survival. Cross stepped closer, voice low, almost a murmur. This isn't just boot camp. Someone has tracked her here, someone dangerous, and they know more than they should. Alyssa's chest tightened. Her secret past had found her in the one place she had hoped to disappear, the structured chaos of boot camp. Her training, her survival instincts, and her covert identity were all at risk of exposure. Dalton edged closer, unable to contain himself. You have to tell me. I can see the truth, your tattoo, your movements. You've survived things no one can imagine. Who are you? Alyssa's eyes hardened. You're too close, she warned. You don't understand the consequences of knowing. But Dalton didn't back down. His curiosity, fueled by awe and fear, pushed him forward. He needed answers. He needed to know the truth. The hooded figure stirred, pushing themselves up from the mud. Eyes glinting, calculating, they assessed Alyssa with a predator's precision. Every muscle was coiled for action. Alyssa's pulse quickened. The past was no longer distant. It had arrived. Cross's hand brushed against his sidearm, though he didn't draw it. His presence alone was enough to signal authority and readiness. He understood the stakes. This wasn't a simple confrontation. This was a collision of past and present, of secrets and survival. Alyssa exhaled slowly, steadying herself. She knew what had to be done. If she didn't act decisively, the exposure of her identity could have catastrophic consequences. Her past wasn't just a secret, it was a weapon, and right now it was aimed at her. The fog swirled thicker, enveloping the field in a ghostly shroud. Dalton stepped back instinctively, finally sensing the danger he had been blind to. Cross's eyes never left Alyssa, every second calculating, every micro-movement analyzed. Alyssa made her choice. She stepped forward, facing the hooded figure directly, boots sinking slightly in the mud. The weight of her tattoo, her past, her identity pressed against her. Every instinct, every skill she had honed over years of survival surged forward. The hooded figure mirrored her movement, coiled like a spring, ready to strike. The tension was palpable, a tangible, electric charge in the fog-filled air. Every heartbeat, every breath, every step mattered. And then, without warning, the figure lunged. Alyssa reacted instantly, moving with the precision of someone who had survived impossible odds. She countered, twisted, pivoted, every motion fluid, deadly, and controlled. The fog swallowed their movements, hiding the lethal dance in its ghostly veil. Dalton watched, frozen, cross-observed, silent but alert. And in the mist, Alyssa realized one terrifying truth. Her past wasn't just catching up, it had arrived. And there was no turning back. The fog pressed in from all sides, thick and suffocating, as if the world itself had folded into a theater of shadows and tension. Boots splashed through puddles, mud flying in every direction. The distant sirens from the code-red drill blended with thunder rolling across the base, but the chaos seemed irrelevant to what was happening now. Alyssa Ward's eyes were sharp, calculating, every movement precise. Years of covert operations, missions nobody knew about, and a past hidden in shadow guided her every instinct. This was no ordinary boot camp. This was a collision of past and present, of secrets she had fought to bury and threats she could no longer ignore. The hooded figure crouched, muscles coiled, ready for the next strike. Their eyes glinted in the mist, trained and lethal. They were someone from her past, someone who had survived encounters she had thought long buried. The weight of recognition pressed down on her, but her focus remained unbroken. Cross stepped slightly forward, his presence commanding, eyes scanning every movement, every micro-adjustment of both figures. He didn't intervene, not yet. He had seen enough to know that Alyssa was more than capable, but he understood that some battles weren't just physical, they were psychological, a test of will and instinct. Dalton Briggs stood frozen a few feet away, mud-caked boots planted firmly, eyes wide with awe and disbelief. He had spent weeks trying to decipher Alyssa Ward, trying to understand her movements, her composure, her abilities. And now, confronted with the reality of her past, he realized just how little he had understood. "You can't hide it anymore," Dalton muttered, voice trembling. I know what that tattoo means. I know who you are." Alyssa's eyes flicked to him, a cold warning buried beneath layers of exhaustion and focus. Curiosity could kill him, literally, in her world. She couldn't afford to let anyone pry too deeply. The hooded figure lunged. Time seemed to stretch, the fog swallowing sound and light, leaving only movement, only instinct. Alyssa pivoted, countered, the movement smooth, lethal, rehearsed in her body long before she had even come to boot camp. Cross's eyes narrowed. He had seen operatives move like this before, but rarely with such fluidity, such precision. Every step Alyssa took, every pivot, every counterstrike was calculated to neutralize the threat while revealing nothing of herself. Dalton whispered, awestruck, "She's unstoppable." Alyssa's pulse was steady. Every fiber of her being was engaged. The tattoo under the sleeve burned faintly, a reminder of the identity she had survived to protect. If it were exposed fully, it could bring enemies, complications, and chaos she had fought to avoid. The hooded figure pressed, striking faster, harder, trying to force a mistake. Alyssa met every move, deflecting, redirecting, anticipating. Her training wasn't just physical, it was mental, honed over years of missions that required split-second decisions and flawless execution under extreme pressure. Suddenly, the figure paused. Alyssa could sense it: hesitation, recognition. Whoever this was, they had underestimated her, and in that moment of pause, Alyssa made her move. A sweeping motion, precise, fast. The hooded figure fell, sliding in the mud, boots scraping against the wet ground. Alyssa stood over them, chest heaving slightly, eyes blazing with controlled intensity. Cross finally stepped forward. His voice was calm but carried the weight of authority and understanding. "Ward, you've survived, but now they know, and if you don't reveal the full truth, others will follow and it won't be safe." Dalton blinked rapidly, mud splattered on his cheeks, disbelief written all over his face. "They're after you, but why here? Why boot camp?" Alyssa's jaw tightened. She had wanted anonymity, normalcy, even briefly. Boot camp was supposed to be a place to blend in, to be just another recruit, but her past had found her inexorably, inevitably. She looked at Cross, then Dalton, then back at the subdued hooded figure. Her hands trembled just slightly beneath her sleeve as she considered her options. For years, she had survived by hiding, by manipulating shadows, by never revealing her true capabilities. But here now, hiding wasn't enough. Not with danger breathing so close. Cross took a slow breath, stepping closer, voice measured. "Ward, show me everything. Your tattoo, your identity, your skills. I can't protect you unless I understand what I'm dealing with." Alyssa exhaled, lifting her sleeve fully, revealing the intricate tattoo in its entirety. Dalton gasped. His awe turned into shock, his mind racing to comprehend the scale of what he was seeing. The tattoo was more than a symbol. It was a map, a signature of elite covert operations, a mark that carried the weight of a life lived in shadows. Cross studied it, recognition flashing in his eyes. "You've survived things that should have killed you," he said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. "And you've come out stronger." Alyssa nodded, eyes scanning the fog, wary of further threats. "They're still out there," she said quietly. "They've been following me for years, and now they know where I am." Dalton stepped closer cautiously, a mix of fear and admiration in his expression. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why hide all this?" Alyssa's voice was firm. "Because the fewer people who knew, the safer everyone else was. My past, it's dangerous, and anyone connected to me could be in danger if it gets out." Cross studied her silently for a long moment. Then finally he nodded. "We deal with danger together. You're not alone here, not anymore." The fog shifted, revealing movement at its edges. Other figures, threats from her past, were beginning to emerge, alerted by the skirmish. Alyssa felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, her survival instincts kicking in fully. "This isn't over," she said, eyes narrowing. "They won't stop, and neither can I." Cross placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying, reassuring, but also a silent promise. "Then we prepare, we fight together." Dalton, still processing, whispered, I understand now. You're not just a recruit, you're something else. And I've been blind to it until now." Alyssa allowed herself a brief, almost imperceptible nod. For the first time in years, she didn't have to fight entirely alone. Her secret, dangerous past had collided with her present, but she had allies, unlikely, unexpected, but real. The hooded figure stirred in the mud, recovering slightly. Alyssa's eyes flicked to them, calculating, ready. Cross positioned himself beside her, his expression unreadable but his presence a shield. Dalton moved back, finally grasping the gravity of the situation. Alyssa's mind raced. She knew the next hours, the next moments could determine everything. Exposure, survival, secrets, and danger, they were all intertwined now. And yet, amid the tension, a small part of her allowed herself to feel something she hadn't in years, the faint spark of hope. She wasn't alone, not anymore. She took a deep breath, muscles coiled, eyes scanning the mist. The past had found her. The threats were real. The secret she had carried for so long was exposed. But she was ready. Boot camp had become the battlefield where her past and present collided. And Alyssa Ward was no ordinary recruit. She was a survivor, a fighter, a force to be reckoned with, and now nothing could stop her. The fog swirled around them as the first sounds of renewed pursuit echoed in the distance. Her jaw tightened. Her pulse remained steady, and the war she thought she had left behind had only just begun.